It is 8:30, so it is time to get going. Thank you all for coming out. And I got to stay behind the speakers. I almost walked in front of them, Wendy. So my name is John Otteson. I am on the Chamber Board this year, so I want to officially welcome you to our second A's and Issues of the season. Our first with our state representatives. Certainly want to thank Senator Rozenboom and Representative Hite and Brink for being here. A few other thank yous before we start. First of all, Midwest Bank for sponsoring the coffee, Steve. Here you go, give him a hand. Smoky Road. Smoky Road for letting us use this throughout the spring-winter season. Oskaloosa News for recording it. This will be on their Facebook page, and you can go back and review it later. The Georgia Daily Auditorium and Andy McGuire for working our sound today. Mayor Creutzville for being our moderator. One cheer, Dave. I don't know what that means. And then the American Legion will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll turn the time over to Dave to start the forum.
Nice job.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. This is a tradition that Oskaloosa has had for more years than I know of, that as we get together, we have the opportunity to talk about local politics. We have the opportunity to talk to the people who are actually the movers and shakers within the governmental efforts that are going on at the State House. This is not a trivial thing. I hear from folks in other states that say they never see the people that actually represent them. They can't make an appointment. They're not considered important enough. Not here. We have the opportunity to talk face-to-face with the people who represent us, very candid conversations, and the ability to do it in a public way, so that way they can be heard and hopefully a better message gets out to people without it being messed up. So I'd like to start this morning, speaking of messages, with our representatives and Senator Ken. Opening remarks. Dustin, would you like to start?
Sure. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Last year, obviously, we did this virtually, and so our audience is much bigger. Last year, it was just the three of us, Ken and Ginger, staring at a camera. So this is it's great to be back. We've just finished up our second week in the State House. And, as I tell people, we don't get much done the first week. We listen to a lot of speeches. But, yeah, this week we got down to business. Just kind of to start out, I still sit on Education, where I'm the chair, Judiciary, Ways and Means, and the Information Technology Committee. And I think that we'll just start there.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is my 10th year doing this, and I am delighted that we're back in person. I love technology, but I like hanging out with people a whole lot more than I do with cameras. So let me start by saying what I always say or often say, and that's it's an honor to represent you in the Iowa Senate. The Lord opened up this door for me 10 years ago. And I walked through that door, and it's been an incredible ride. And it's had interactions with thousands of people. I've built many, many beautiful relationships, and it's been an honor. I won't get into a lot of detail. We'll probably do that in the question and answer period. I will tell you that my committee assignments include the Appropriations Committee, so that's the largest single committee in the Iowa Senate. 21 of the senators are on it. And we decide how we're going to spend money, the taxpayer money through the state. I serve on the Education Committee, I serve on the Agriculture Committee, the Transportation Committee, and then the Natural Resources and Environmental Committee, which has been probably the single committee that I spent most of the time on in those 10 years. Whether it's water quality issues or natural resources, I spent a lot of time on that, and I continue to serve on that committee while I don't chair it anymore. So I also serve as the budget sub-chairman, co-chairman for the Ag and Natural Resources Budget Subcommittee. So we're the ones that fund IDOLs and the DNR, and so I'll have a hearing on that Monday morning, is how I'll start the morning Monday. So good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. This is my 4th year, and I am also glad. I'm just going to do this. It won't ring. Okay, it's ringing. Great. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So this is my 4th year. This year, I am chair of government oversight. I'm also on education, appropriations, economic development, and IT as well. So it's been an honor the last few years of serving you, and I look forward to having discussion today.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments. And so, as is the usual tradition, we will open it up to questions from the audience. And then the way this is going to work is I'll be walking around the room like we have in the past. I'll hang on to the microphone so that way you can focus on what you're saying. And then also we do ask that we get your name, at least where you're from, so that way we have some sense of reference as to where your question is coming from. And so in terms of getting started, I see one hand already.
Thank you, Eric Palmer from Oskaloosa. What I wanted to ask about, since it's the beginning of the session, is vision. What is your vision for the state of Iowa? And I've got a few thoughts. There's a lot of one-time federal dollars from the COVID relief bill. So you've got some extra money that can really do something for the current Iowans, but future generations. There are some areas that I think really need some attention. Public education, both at the state university level, K through 12, and private colleges with the grants that they receive from the state. It's my understanding that the last 10 years that state support for public schools has been under 2% on the average. You've always said, we don't have the money, we don't have the money. Well, you got the money, do something. Your support for the state universities last year was flat, 0. So, look at our public schools, and I stress public, because you've been neglecting our public schools. So do something. Okay, thank you, Dave. Well, I'm gonna give you something to talk about. The environment. Our water is filthy. Our parks are falling apart. Put some money into that Iowa program that I voted for in 2010. You got the money to do it. Fund it for 5 years. Do that like Minnesota and Missouri do, and you will see a great benefit for now and the future. Mental health. I know, David. We got to get this started. I want to know what their vision is. Okay. All right. This is the last thing I'm going to say because I'm going to cut off. Tax cuts won't solve these problems. Iowans working together through state government will. What is your vision?
Well, Eric, it would not be eggs and issues without you. So I appreciate you leading that off. I think Governor Reynolds laid out a pretty bold agenda in her condition of the state. I'm going to disagree with you on many of your points, including the fact that I do think tax cuts, Iowans deserve to keep more of their own money. And so I think that the governor's proposal to get to a 4% flat tax is good for the state of Iowa. We hear all the time about Iowans moving away because of the taxes and retirement, and so the governor's attempt to try to address that, I think, is a good place to start. When it comes to public education, and I'm glad you brought that up, Eric, in the past 10 years, there's been, if we adopt the governor's proposal of $154 million, there's been over $1 billion new dollars spent on K through 12 public education. I'd say that's a pretty good start on that. So I think that we as a state do put an emphasis on education. It takes up 57% of our entire state budget. Let that sink in. 57% of our state budget is spent on education, K through 12 and higher ed. It's important. I sat on a committee, an interim committee this summer, where we had 2 meetings and we talked with the regents' presidents, the presidents from the University of Iowa, Northern Iowa, and Iowa State. I also visited all 3 college campuses this year. And what I came away from that is, you are right, our regents are doing an excellent job educating our students, and they're also doing it, despite what we hear, lack of state funding, we have some of the lowest tuition rates among their peer institutions, our 3 regents institutions. So I think that is great. I agree that we need to continue to fund our K through 12 public education systems, continue to work on continue funding the regents. The governor proposed a 2.5% increase across the board, community colleges, Iowa tuition grant, and regents institutions. I think that's a good thing. When it comes to higher ed, I'm always supportive of all 3 approaches: community colleges, private colleges, and regents institutions, because I think they offer opportunities for all of Iowa's students to decide what works best for them.
I'm just going to try to add on to some of what Dustin talked about. When it does come to public education, I feel we do spend a lot of time and effort also making sure we're putting in programs, putting things into place that can help. This year it's been students graduating, also helping that middle of the road, trying to figure out different ways, helping the substitute teachers, helping more teachers get into the field. We just worked on a bill this week to remove the practice exam to help students, or help teachers, or individuals become teachers, I should say, sorry. And so I think we have spent a lot of emphasis. We work on that together a lot. When it does come to the tax cuts, we are losing people, and that's why the 4% is so important. In Iowa, we have 64,000 people in unemployment, but we have 110,000 jobs that need to be filled. So even if every single person in our state went to work, we still have so many jobs that are open. So we need to be able to find ways to entice people to stay, entice people to come, because we need people. We have the jobs, so we have to find a way. And if the tax bracket is one of the biggest issues we're hearing, more people are leaving, then that's what we need to fix. So it will help our state grow. So I just want to add that.
Eric, you gave us a lot of grist to work with, and I'll try to be brief. I'm just going to touch on a couple of points, and if you're not satisfied, take another stab at it, I guess. First of all, I mentioned that I've been on the Appropriations Committee for 10 years. So I've always been at the table when I watched us develop the state budget. In my first 4 years, I was in the minority. I had no control over that process. And each of those 4 years, I watched a shell game going on with Senate leaders trying to figure out how to spend every dime they could get their hands on. And that necessitated some games with what I refer to as a shell game, I guess. Let's take this out of this and put it over there and that sort of thing. The bottom line was they spent every dime they had, plus a few usually, which is why in the period that preceded our party taking control, that meant that you made promises, for instance, to public education. For 12 years, you made promises. In 6 of those years, in October, you broke those promises because you didn't have the money to fund what you had promised in January. We don't do that. Senate Republicans have always had and will always have at least a 5-year projection on the budget. We don't do one-year budgets. We're looking at it from the perspective long term. Therefore, we have delivered every penny that we have promised to education and to other government activities. And we've done it, and now we have a budget surplus because we have spent those pennies wisely. And we have worked long and hard to put ourselves into a position where we can actually reduce the tax burden on Iowans. When I ran 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I often would say Iowa is known as a place with friendly friendly people, but an unfriendly tax climate. We're trying to change that. We've already changed it some. We hope to change it more. Regarding your assertion that Iowa's waters are filthy, I have pushed back on that all of my years. I will continue to push back on that. No one has ever provided any documentation to me, including you, to back that up. On the other side, there's probably no one single legislator in the state of Iowa that has spent more effort, worked more on that than I have. Governor Branstad came to me in 2016, late in the session, and he asked me to lead the initiative because he wanted to work on that issue. What came out of that and finally passed out of the House early in the session of 2018 was Senate File 512, which is by far the single most significant piece of legislation ever passed in Iowa to address the water quality in our state. We have nutrient-rich soils. We have abundant rainfall. That's why we have such a garden spot in the state of Iowa to grow what we grow. By definition, that means that we're always going to be battling nutrients getting into our water. But Senate File 512 provided long-term funding, $270 million over the next 10 years to address issues, to provide scientific solutions to those problems. So, and we extended that another 10 years last year by way of legislation. So, for you to lecture me about dirty water, when I've done, I think, as much or more than about anybody in the state, rings a little hollow.
Hi, Kyle Brown here from Oskaloosa. I just wanted to talk about the corporate tax rate that Kim Reynolds talked about in her State of the State. I did some quick math with some fake companies here real quick. So E-rate expectations, let's say they do $200,000, right? Under the current code, we're paying about 9% in income tax. In the corporate tax, which is about $18,000 a year. Let's say that Don Gier makes $200 million. They're paying currently 0.098%, which is $19.6 million in taxes a year that they'd be paying into the state. By 2027, they're expecting that tax rate to drop to the same thing that mine will drop to, which is 0.88. So that $200,000 that E-rate expectations will be paying would be $17,600. So you save about $400 a year total for my small business. That other fake company, Don Gier, they'd be saving about $2 million, dropping from $19.6 million to $17.6 million. That $2 million seems like it could go a long way in this state in 2027, so I guess I'm just curious why you think we need that tax break when companies like John Deere spent their last tax break on buybacks, stock buybacks and things. So that's my question.
I'll start with this and Don. I'm sorry, was it Don? No, Kyle. Kyle, I'm sorry, Kyle. You threw a lot of numbers out there. I didn't try to follow them. The governor revealed in her condition of the state address a tax cut plan. That's fine. But no.
We can talk about it accurately instead of just throwing it up.
Okay, my friend Holly says she can talk about that. I just want to tell you that the governor has her tax reduction plan. I know that Dan Dawson, who chairs the Ways and Means Committee in the Senate, is working on his own tax reduction plan. I don't know the details of either one of those yet, but we'll have the discussion. I do know that with Senator Dawson's plan, he's taking a hard look at the tax credits also that are issued. So, you know, you have to have that discussion in the context of both tax rates and tax credits. And so I'm going to reserve judgment and how I vote on any of those proposals, and I'm sure the House is working on something, until I see the details. Thank you.
So I think what we're seeing some of the discussion go on in the House is if we are going to look at that corporate tax rate, I think there's an appetite to also look at some of the business tax credits and look at that as a whole, including, you know, again, with lower taxes, maybe some of those tax credits don't need to be there. So I think that's kind of the discussion we're seeing. Again, it's early on in the session, so we'll see where that goes.
I was just gonna go with what Dustin said. I know that's the discussion of the House is, you know, are we even gonna touch the corporate tax rate? You know, that is the governor's plan, but that doesn't mean it's everybody else's plan. I believe there's 186 different tax credits. In order to make it flow, we basically have to get rid of every one of them. And so, you know, that's obviously a discussion we're having. So just because something's proposed right now doesn't mean we're not really looking into the numbers, really looking into it and trying to move what is best for all Iowans.
That's all the information we have right now is kind of what come out. That's all that we have.
That was what the governor said, so that's all I have to really work on right now. All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Cridge, and I'm here all the way from Indiana. I learned from an Iowa Select Farms truck driver about some animal cruelty that was happening. So my friend and I looked into it. I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time, but I think it's important that everyone here know about it. It was a mass kill method known as ventilation shutdown. They loaded thousands of pigs into these industrial sheds and sealed off all of the vents and pumped in steam, heat and boiling steam to temperatures well over 100 degrees. And we were able to capture video and audio of all of it. It was very heartbreaking. I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but I'd like to play 5 or 10 seconds of the audio for you. Thank you. After my friend and I published our video in the media, there was no prosecution for this cruelty. Ironically, we were the ones who faced felony prosecution. My friend was also charged under the Ag-Gag law, which you, Senator Rozenboom, championed. I know you're a person of faith, and I know you would never want God's creatures abused like this. So my question to you is, why would you fight to have this kind of brutality covered up? And people like me with a conscience who are trying to expose it thrown into prison.
Nice to meet you, Linda. I've met Matt Johnson many times, more times than I care to say. I will answer your question about the ventilation shutdown. Anybody that really knows what happened 2 years ago with regard to the livestock industry in Iowa understands what happens. The procedure that was used is the last ditch procedure that is approved by the American Veterinary Association. Now, I can talk a long time about any one of these issues, and I'm not going to bore the audience with that. I will tell you this. You just played an audio clip. Your group, DXE, is well known for your dishonesty, for staging photos, for telling lies, and for a media that is more than willing to parrot those lies on your behalf. So, yesterday, I assume you were at the Capitol causing a ruckus. I don't know, you didn't get on the news. I'm sure that disappointed you. But DXE and your MO is not appreciated in Iowa. So you can keep attacking me and other pork producers if you wish. I will keep fighting back. You mentioned that I'm a person of faith. I strongly suspect that I've forgotten more about livestock production than you will ever know. You don't raise livestock by abusing them, by mistreating them, because you go broke overnight doing it. So all the assertions, all the lies that you tell do not resonate in Mahaska County, Iowa.
So, my understanding of what happened,
criminalize documenting what is going on. You all have the right to know what is happening inside these facilities, and ag laws need to end because people have the right to know what is happening.
Would you please, this is not what this forum is for. Please leave. Would you please leave? Please leave.
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
Have you had enough of this already?
Rozenboom
Are we
is to
done?
blame!
Are we done pretty soon here?
Rozenboom
Can
is
you
to blame!
please stop disturbing this event? Please
Rozenboom
leave
is to blame!
this event. You have done enough to disturb this
Rozenboom
event.
is to blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws are
Please
Iowa's
leave.
shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws
Go
are
back.
Iowa's shame!
To Indiana.
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to
I
blame!
could use a little help from the audience if you've seen enough. Would you please shout them down?
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Would you please get out of here?
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to
Is
blame!
there a quota that you guys are shooting for? How often we say
Rozenboom is
stuff?
to blame!
I'm just trying to figure out where we're going with this.
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to
Could you
blame!
please stop this
Iowa's shame!
on behalf of the city of Oskaloosa? Would you please stop disturbing this?
Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Thank you for leaving.
To blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
Ag laws are Iowa's shame!
Rozenboom is to blame!
So in our effort with the city of Oskaloosa to put ourselves on the map, that ain't what we do. And I hope you have a very strong opinion about the DFC organization as a result of that. So,
ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. I know you guys came out to hear comments about a whole host of different things. I would simply add the following. I know Iowa livestock farmers. I know a lot of Iowa livestock farmers. They care for their animals. They do the best that they can. And the particular laws that this group was addressing was actually passed bipartisanly, at least in the Iowa House. So that's just where I would leave it.
I guess I shouldn't say much. I'll just say this. I have every intention of resigning, or not resigning, not running again, resigning from the Senate. If this happens much more, I may reconsider.
I was just gonna say, welcome to our world. This stuff happens quite often, and it's everywhere we go, and so.
Hi, my name is Diane Crookham Johnson. I live in Oskaloosa. And to piggyback on the comments that were just made, Senator Rozenboom has for 10 years, and plus that, I don't want to guess how many years you were supervisor, served this county well. He has been open to listening and has welcomed comments and private conversations when you don't agree with his policy. And he has taken policy stands that are not always in agreement with the party because it was good for Mahaska County. What happened this morning is not anything that he deserves. It's not how you deal with a politician when you don't agree with their politics. And I think he deserves a round of applause for us and support from all of us for his work.
You're here.
Hi, Cheryl Benson, Oskaloosa. As a former teacher, I'm always concerned when the government wants to take money away from public education and give it to private. I feel like our government ensures us a free public education. There is nowhere where it says you are insured a free private education. So the ESAs, the education savings accounts that are in committee now, I believe, I have some questions on how that bill is written. First of all, is there a cap on the amount that could be used? So I realize this isn't tax money going out, but it's less tax money coming in. So is there a cap on that? Number two, is there any accountability built in for people who get these savings accounts? So for example, in Arizona, there was $700,000 that was spent on clothing and beauty supplies. So is there some way to ensure that doesn't happen in Iowa? Number three, whenever you offer money, there's going to be new providers who pop up to take that money. Is there a way to vet these new education services to make sure they are appropriate and doing what they say they're doing? And finally, would the private ones who get this money be required to take every student, or can they reject whoever they don't want to service? Thank you.
So Cheryl, I'm going to start since I chair the Education Committee in the House. I do have one correction for what you just said. The governor's proposal actually is tax dollars going out. It is Iowa tax dollars going out. And so the way it's set up is, or at least the governor's proposal is these educational savings account, 10,000 of them, half are divided between children that meet the 400% of poverty or less, and half to children with IEPs. It is roughly $5,000, $5,200 per child. That's not exact, but close enough. As my grandfather who worked for the post office said, close enough for government work. And then those go into savings account. The governor's proposal would say that those can be used for private school tuition and some other educational things. As far as an audit procedure, as far to what was paid for what, that I don't know if it's built in the bill. I've seen drafts, and I believe there is something that says if you are using it for things that you shouldn't use it, that would be a crime. And I apologize. What else were you talking about? I'm sorry. Oh, new providers. My belief would be that it would be just like any other private school that would want to come in and become accredited, because the proposals I've seen is that it's limited to be used for accredited non-public schools. That's the proposal now. And then did you have something else?
Whether they have to accept all students.
So that is not in the bill, and in fact, the proposal in the bill says that private schools cannot be told or dictated what to do if they accept state money, and that's actually one of my concerns. I've only been in this job for 3 years, going on 4. And it seems to me, anytime that the state of Iowa gives you money, or any government for that matter, that we will tell you what to do. And that's my concern for my private schools. I'm not sure that they want that. And so I know I've spoken with a group of homeschoolers. This bill would not be for homeschooling. But I think they've made great strides in this state to get to where they are. And I would hate to see that, lost. But that's kind of a rundown of what my understanding of the governor's ESA proposal is. What I would also say is that, let us know what you think on that, because obviously there are different opinions on both sides of that aisle, but that's what we're here to do, is to represent you, and so we just need to know where our constituents stand. Did I hit everything, Cheryl? Okay. My understanding is that the state treasurer would be tasked with auditing that. I don't know if these ESAs, one question I have, and I haven't got an answer yet, but I just asked it on Thursday last week, so I don't expect that I'd have an answer, is do these come under the purview of the state auditor? By accepting money, do private schools come under the purview of the state auditor? I don't know. But that would be a question that I would have as well, because we need to make sure state tax dollars are used wisely. But I don't know that private schools want to be subject to that either.
Thanks for the question, Cheryl. A couple of comments on, Dustin covered most of it. I don't know that actual bill's been dropped yet. I've been briefed, I think, twice in the governor's office on the contents of it, but they were still, it was a work in process. A couple of points I would make. One is the idea, the concern about what's typically expressed as public money going to private education always troubles me just a little bit, because we've been doing that for well over 50 years in Iowa by way of the Iowa tuition grant. We have sent public money to private colleges for 52 or 53 years in Iowa. And it's always been just try to undo that process. Try to do what Holly and Dustin and I do and say, well, let's not do that anymore. While there'd be an outcry that you could hear to Washington, D.C., because it's a very popular program. So this is similar in nature to that. It's just for K through 12. The other point I would make, in broad strokes, I'm not going to get into the weeds here, is simply the concept of school choice. We see that conversation playing out across the country, most notably in Virginia in that election a few weeks ago. So parents are saying loudly and clearly, in some cases, they want a choice, and this is an attempt to provide that choice.
Senator Rozenboom, you had said that you never received any proof that the waters are filthy in Iowa. I kept an eye on the state reports from last year at Lake Keoma. When I was a kid, I used to go out there and swim regularly. And at least half of the summer, it was not safe to swim in Lake Keoma. So we do have a water quality problem in Iowa. I wasn't responding.
No response?
No question.
I've just given you proof that the water is filthy in Iowa. That we could use some of this federal money to maybe improve our water quality. Pass the I-Will. I mean, put money in the I-Will without raising the tax. But we do have filthy waters in the state, and that's what you said you've had to improve.
Lawrence Rao. Carbon sequester pipeline is proposed to come through Mahaska County like Dakota Access did. It happens to go across me again, I'm quite sure. Does the legislators have anything to do with yes or no on that system?
No, the answer is no, Lawrence. And I believe I've heard Bobby Kaufman, who is always kind of in the House, I champion for him against eminent domain. I think I heard him say this week he's not planning on changing Iowa law to accommodate this pipeline. Maybe if I'm wrong in that, maybe someone will correct me. I will make a couple observations about the pipeline itself. I'm not anti-pipeline. I have deep concerns about this one because at least two levels. One is the The money that's driving this is basically tax credit money, and that tax credit program at the federal level expires in 12 years. I don't know why we would build a pipeline that is based on funding that is guaranteed for only 12 years. The other concern I have is that eminent domain, there's a public need requirement to eminent domain, and I fail to understand what the public need is in this case.
So I think, Lawrence, Ken's right, we don't, on particular projects, we don't have a yay or a nay vote. My understanding that Representative Kaufman is looking at maybe a more of a long-term thing, because the issue is, I think there's 500 landowners that have already agreed to sell land for this pipeline, and that's the challenge. Is those folks want to, other folks don't. Where do we as the legislature come down in that? This is always a tricky subject and a difficult one, I think, at least for me, to figure out what the proper thing is. I think there might be, over the next couple of years, a look at the whole process, especially with regard to pipelines, but I don't see anything coming about this particular pipeline this year.
Alrighty, Ken also, right here locally. Senator, this year, the Iowa Senate no longer sat the media in the chamber. Of course, one of my big concerns, and one of those that I'm going to be an advocate for, is making sure that there's sunshine within our government, both locally, ask the mayor, or at the state level or national level. What kind of assurances do we have that going forward we will have sunshine and accountability within the Senate?
Ken, thanks for the question. You and I go way back, and I respect you, and I think you respect me, but this is a tempest in a teapot. Obviously the newspapers are going to write about it, the news media is going to write about it. I guess an ego was bruised or something. We are totally accessible to the press at all times. This is a technicality. There is a press row, historically called the press row, in front of the Senate chamber, the same thing in the House. And Senate leaders decided last year, because of COVID, the press had to go up into the balcony. So they're up 12 feet higher. This year they decided to continue that tradition, I think partly because of COVID, but also partly because, in their words, media is getting harder to define. There's bloggers, there's electronic, there's people like yourself, Ken, that aren't traditional media. And others ask for credentials too, other than just the Des Moines Register, the Cedar Rapids Gazette, and Radio Iowa. So I wasn't part of that conversation, but I do believe it's a tempest in a teapot. I haven't seen a member of the press in the balcony yet. Everything we do in the Senate chamber is on, and in the House, is both on live streaming video and archived. So I just think it's silly to talk, and we're all accessible. I get phone calls from reporters all the time. So tempest in a teapot.
Gary Capps from here in Oskaloosa. I have a couple of thoughts on topics that we brought up, and I'll try and make it brief. First of all, regarding the flat income tax, I think any flat income tax is a terrible idea. All it does is penalize lower income people and reward higher income people. And in addition, we already have a flat tax here in Iowa. We call it the sales tax. And that's kind of a misnomer because you aren't really taxed for selling anything, you're taxed for buying things. And I would say, given the popularity of the sales tax moratorium each August prior to school, it would be helpful, and I would like you to comment on whether you'd consider making some adjustments to the sales tax to give everybody some relief from that, rather than adopting adopting another flat tax. Secondly, in regards to education, I wrote this down so I could talk about it correctly. The governor has evidently just received a report on the task for growing a diverse teacher base here in Iowa. Relative to that, the minority population in the public schools has risen to about 26%, while the minority teacher population is less than 3%. So that's one thing that they were tasked to look at. But in addition, they recommended that the legislature fund a study committee to see why more people are not going into public education as teachers and why teachers are leaving. I guess I would recommend that you look in the mirror and ask yourself, in the last 10 years, what has the legislature done, or what have I done personally to promote public education, or what has the legislature done, or what have I done personally to discourage public education?
So Gary, I think you got a couple of things. I'll touch briefly on the sales tax issue. I don't know that there's a ton of appetite, at least in the House side, to look at sales tax. It's just not something I think that we've heard. And we've heard, from both sides, folks wanting to fund IWIL, which would necessitate an increase of at least 3/8 of a cent in sales tax. So I don't see a lot of appetite there. I'll just talk about some things we're doing in the House this year to help with the teacher shortage, because there is a teacher shortage. As Representative Brink said, just this week, we passed a bill through the House Education Committee to eliminate the praxis exam. That was an exam put in place by law about 10 years ago, give or take a couple of years. And what we were constantly hearing was that it really wasn't serving a purpose, and it was keeping people who had already gone through 4 years of education to become a teacher out of the education field. And so that passed unanimously with the support of all groups, including the Teachers Association and other educational groups. And I think that was kind of a highlight this year. I'm working on a bill. I'm waiting to hear back from a couple groups, but expect to drop it next week, that looks at people who are looking to go into education as a kind of a second career. Currently, if that's what you want to do, you have to go through the RAPPL program, which is through our state regents universities. It's a 2-year program, and so you basically have to stop your life for 2 years, pay 2 years of tuition. And a lot of people who have a growing family at that time can't afford that. So my bill will shorten that time. Right now, the proposal is 15 hours. Which in my thought you could get it in over a summer, and then you would then enter into an employment contract with the school, and you'd essentially be a teacher for the next year, kind of as a combination intern, student teacher, so that you can learn on the job for that next year. I'm actually working with the ISEA on that particular proposal to help people get into education and get into it affordably. One of the other things that I did is I filed a tax bill in my education committee and just made everybody lose their mind. I'm sure that everybody knows in this county we have wind turbines, and we have a tax increment finance district that the county has put in place that includes all of those wind turbines, the driveway back to them, and all the county roads. Basically what that means is the county takes all the taxes from those wind turbines and uses it on our county roads. I think we do need some work on our county roads, but that comes at the cost to our to our public schools and to the Iowa taxpayer, because for the state foundation aid, the money that the schools lose, the state of Iowa backfills. Currently we are backfilling over $70 million worth of these TIF projects, and it also reduces the ability of schools to levy for certain things. So we actually passed that out of my committee yesterday. A lot of people scratched their heads on a TIF bill in education, but simply says, you know what, counties, if you want to do that, that's fine, but you're not getting the schools' money. And if we got to tighten that up a little bit, we can. But that's what I've done for our public schools just in the past week.
mentioned last year, a lot of people don't realize that we did pass a bill that helped individuals that maybe have an AA also become a student teacher or become a substitute teacher. I think it was the November class through the AA had over 30 individuals within a few county radius that actually participated in that. So hopefully that also helps in the education is being able to find our substitutes. So we passed that, and that program was actually going really well.
Yeah, hi, my name is Curtis. I'm an out-of-towner from Michigan, and this is directed towards Senator Rozenboom. I grew up hunting and fishing, some of my earliest childhood memories. I looked at this little flyer. I saw an article by Glenn Greenwald, journalist who's known for breaking the Edward Snowden whistleblower story. This stuff appears to be credible, so I'm just wondering how we could support kind of criminalizing people, whistleblowers, and not wanting to, prosecute these corporations. Like, why are we trying to hide this stuff? This ventilation shutdown practice.
Okay, just to answer that, as he said, the practice that was used was already approved by individuals that the Veterans Association, I can't remember who was it. American Veterinary Association. But I can also tell you that the individuals that are going in for this are doing tremendous amount of damage. Senator Rosenboom's own barn was broken to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of damage, cutting down the curtains, which also harms the animals. So individuals that are saying they are there to protect these animals, put these animals in harm's way by damaging the barn. And so I think that's a concern as well. So some of these individuals that are doing their claiming to protect animals and not want anything are doing a tremendous amount of damage because they don't know what needs to be done.
So I'm not going to touch more on this topic because I don't think our constituents actually came here to talk about this. But what I'm going to say again is that bill passed bipartisanly, Democrats and Republicans in the Iowa House, and it was to stand up for Iowa property owners and their rights.
Next question.
I'm Mike Long from here in town. Obviously, there is a teacher shortage. There has been, and there's going to continue to be a teacher shortage. There are several reasons for this. One, in 2017, you stabbed teachers in the back by taking away their ability to bargain for decent contracts. Now, you allow students who can be infected with a deadly disease to run around without masks and infect teachers and other staff members. You refuse to get people vaccinated. We're not going to tell anybody, so just go ahead and be free and infect people. You're telling them how to do their job. Teachers go to school for a reason. They are professionals. You are trying to micromanage their ability to do their job, and you shouldn't be doing that. You don't go into a dentist's office telling me, well, you need to work on my teeth this way. You let the professional do their job. So will you restore Chapter 20 so they can have the ability to bargain for fair contracts? And will you quit micromanaging teachers' ability to do their professional job?
Thank you for coming. One thing I want to let you know is in 2018, Iowa was based number 6 in what we pay our teachers out of 50 states. It came out last year, we were 8th. We're actually now 6th. So under a Republican trifecta, we've moved up 2 spots in what we pay our teachers. I think that's a tremendous thing to be done. So we are paying our teachers, we've moved up 2 positions, 25% actually if you want on a percentage basis in what we pay our teachers. I think it's important that we do know, and on the micromanaging, that's something I'm actually looking at is I'm meeting with Director Lebo this next week, going through the Iowa code, and is there things that are maybe outdated? Is there things that don't need to be done anymore? I had a conversation with her on Friday, as well as a couple of education staffers, and we are going to be going through the code to see what we maybe can remove to loosen up the mandates and that type of stuff. So that's something we are working on.
So Mike, obviously I wasn't here when Chapter 20 was done. But I wouldn't necessarily support changing what was done because, again, it's the taxpayer on the other side of that right now. As far as micromanaging teachers, I would say that's heard, and we see that a lot. We have bills that come through our committee that have good intention, including one about making teachers be required to learn about how to deal with students with seizures. And the pushback, and I get it, is that's just more and more things for teachers to do. And so my hope is to try to look at that and see what we can do, especially on those training requirements, that sort of thing, to figure out what really needs to be there, what doesn't need to be there, maybe what only needs to be there every couple years. Because all of those types of things, there's good intentions behind them, but they do start to become a burden. I will also say when I've been around the state this year, talking with different groups, education groups, teacher groups, the education departments at our Regents institutions, the two things that I'm told when they talk to teachers who leave the profession, the two top things that make them leave are number one, student behavior, and number two, lack of support from administrators. Those are the two things that they're telling me are what are causing teachers to leave the profession. I don't have answers to those, but I'm certainly open to listen if anybody has thoughts.
I'll take a 30,000-foot view of this. Yes, we're short of teachers, we're short of welders, we're short of nurses, we're short of any profession you can list. We're short of farm workers. Which brings me back to why I ran for this office 10 years ago. And that was to make Iowa a better place in terms of, it's always been a great place to raise our families, and it continues to be so. But we need to grow our economy in the state of Iowa. We need to grow our population. We've done everything we've done the last several years has been driven by that vision. Very thanks for the word vision. We've had a vision on that. And therefore, last year, Iowa was rated the #1 state in the country in terms of opportunity. That's significant. That's been our goal, is to create more opportunity. And the other thing I will mention is that Iowa was regarded as the best state in the union on how it dealt with COVID over the last 2 years. And we were also rated #1 in recovery from the economic damage of COVID. So yeah, there's problem areas, we know that. But overall, 30,000-foot view, I think the governor's done a remarkable job, and I think the legislature's done a fine job too.
My name is Corey Trainer from here in Oskaloosa. I hear you talk about teacher shortages, and I think one thing that each of you can do this legislative session is to encourage other legislators up there on the Hill to tone down the rhetoric around teachers. We've been characterized as some of us having a sinister agenda, things such as being charged for felonies and such for those things. I guess maybe this is a comment, or maybe you want to comment or push back on some of these things about the characterizations of teachers by some of your colleagues there. Thank you.
So Corey, I spoke with the Des Moines Register. I know exactly what you're talking about. I just simply disagree. As the governor said, I'm not going to own that. That wasn't me. That person doesn't speak for me, and I don't speak for them. But what you say is certainly well heard. I will tell you that Iowa legislators, we know teachers are hardworking people. We know that teachers do a good job. They do the best job that they can. Just like any profession, there's bad apples. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's lawyers, farmers, mayors. Occasionally get a bad apple, but the vast majority of teachers that I know are certainly good people, just trying to do the best they can.
Okay, we had one other question. Ken, you mentioned a couple of the best Iowa rated #1. Do you have a source for that? Was it done like by some sort of a news service or something along that line?
Holly says she's got it. I don't right off the top of
National NSLC, National, what's it?
National
I know the code.
Association of State Legislators.
Yes, they voted us the #1 to withstand the pandemic. Sorry, my voice is, I maybe cheered a little bit loud in a wrestling tournament, and I don't have a very good voice today. The National Association, was it NSLC, right? National States Legislation, I can get you the article. I know we have it, it was talked about all last year, but we were #1 to withstand the pandemic, especially financially.
So who backs that group then? Like, where's the money come from that group?
It's a bipartisan thing, we don't have any.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, if you could find out what that is though, and just put it on your Facebook or something, that'd be great.
Okay, we're getting to, in fact, it's 9:30 now. I wanted to ask one question from my own privilege. That this morning we saw some rather uncivil behavior. And the observation from a person who's kind of fairly new to this, that maybe 10, 20, 30 years worth, it seems like the level of rhetoric, the level of passion, the level of dignity to a certain degree has been declining the last few years. And I guess I wanted to ask you if you could tell from personal experience, has that been the case for you as well, and at the State House?
Yes, this is normal. My daughter, the reason she got so nervous is because last summer, 2 summers ago now, she was attacked at the Capitol with them getting in her face, screaming and making her cry. People like that have attacked my little girl. We went to go, I took her to a bill signing, and she was so excited to come with mommy. And a very large group got in her face screaming, and State Patrol had to grab us and take us behind locked doors. This is normal anymore. I get letters all the time saying I should be kidnapped and caged. I can show you them. Derogatory about my female parts. It is ridiculous. It is one thing to disagree, but it is a whole other thing when you are sending letters to where my children live, or attacking my daughter who was 7 carrying her baby. Blaming individuals. I know this last summer there was the F word and then naming different representatives. I have a video from my phone that I actually took of, like, when people are saying it didn't happen in Iowa, when the protests of the summer, I have a video from the day that we were there, screaming and beating on tables in the Capitol. Running, chasing people, like it's happening. There was a day, Dustin, we were in the library, and we had to have State Patrol come and get behind and push people out. We had to sneak some of the elderly through a different exit and run through the Capitol. So it's happening. It is absolutely happening. I've had to be escorted to my car numerous times. I had to speak at an event, and I had to have, there were some people there with detail because there were some threats. It's happening. And we try to come here, and we try to talk to you guys, and that's why it's nice.
No, you're not going to get the microphone, ma'am, because people like you are the problem. No, you don't get the floor, ma'am. Dave, to answer your question, my interaction with my colleagues and with the interaction I have with my colleagues, with the lobby, with people is virtually always cordial. We disagree strongly sometimes, but there's a dignity to the Senate that is maintained within those walls almost exclusively. There are a few exceptions. Outside, we have a radical few, and we saw some of those this morning. And typically, they are totally untethered from the truth. Truth means nothing to them, and they get a little wild sometimes. I have received in the last year probably, and I know Holly's received many as well, and I assume Dustin gets them. We have an anonymous suitor somewhere that regularly sends us letters, handwritten newspaper clippings with absolute filth And we get them all the time. And in my case, the return address may say Dave Crutchfield from Oskaloosa. Or it may come supposedly from the vet clinic here in Oskaloosa. Just random addresses on the return address. So this person, there's some real sadistic tendencies from this person, and I know Holly, being a woman, has been subjected to that even more than I have been. So there is that piece of this that is very disturbing, very sad, but it's a fringe. It's a radical fringe that has typically no credibility. It appears that's the only way they feel important in the world, is if they can run someone else down and degrade someone else. So I don't characterize my work as that at all. I have wonderful, warm relationships with thousands of people on both sides of the aisle, and that's what I'm going to remember. And we'll forget about some of these losers.
So Dave, I'm not gonna go through, but yeah, there's a lot of it. Our families put up with a lot. We put up with a lot. But here's what I would say: we know that's not you guys. We all get passionate about things. We get passionate up here. You guys get passionate out there. Sometimes we raise our voices a little bit. That's okay. But we know it's not you guys. We are here because we love representing you guys. We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't. But I think we all, the three of us, we can put that behind us. We know that it's not the vast majority of our constituents. Many times it's not even our constituents. Many more times it's not even Iowans. But it does get a little old. I think for our part, we try not to raise that rhetoric. I hope that nobody's ever thought that I have. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody about any topic that they want. We may walk away not agreeing with each other, but I'm hoping that at least we can walk away thinking, you know, we each got to say our point, and I guess that's just the way it's going to be. So hopefully for our part, Dave, we're not raising that rhetoric. I know we try to tap it down, and we are running a little bit late, Ken. Sorry, we got interrupted in the middle, you know. But we know it's not you guys, and we certainly appreciate and enjoy representing you all.
Okay, and so noted on the time. Do you have any parting comments?
I'll just say thanks for always having a friendly environment. But no, just honestly, thank you for coming and having a dialogue, having the questions, and just listening and having those open discussions. I mean, this is important. That's why we always try to do it. That's why we're glad to be back here. And so we truly do appreciate. I know I'm personally honored to represent all of you, and so thank you.
I'll just say it makes me glad to live in Oskaloosa, Iowa, and when I witnessed the fringe element from California.
So I'm going to end by saying, number one, let's keep the lines of communication open. As you all have concerns, email is the best available option for me, and I think for both Ken and Holly up here. If you get a chance, come up to the Capitol, especially during session. Come look us up. It's a lot of fun. If we have some time, we'll even make it to the top of the dome. The Pella Tulip Queens are coming on the 30th of March, Ken. I've got my Dutch prayer ready. Do you? All right. But if you got an opportunity to come up to the Capitol when we're in session, it's a lot of fun. It's a beautiful building, and it's great to know that how Iowa works. And I would echo what these two have said. We enjoy doing this. The people that we work with, whether it's other legislators, both Republican and Democrat, lobbyists, constituents, other government officials, we enjoy working with them, and so we look forward to being back here next month.
So that'll wind things up for the morning. That winds things up for the morning. As always, we want to say a special thanks to Midwest One for supplying the coffee and allowing us to have the adrenaline that comes with fresh coffee in the morning. Thank you to them. We say thank you to Smoky Row for the use of the building, the use of facilities, and dominating their space. Oski News, for their video recording. This will be played back at a later date. The Georgia Daily Auditorium for the sound system that helps all of us to be heard. And finally to the American Legion for their leading the Pledge of Allegiance and the presentation of the flags. So, hope you got your money's worth today and you got something to talk about. And go out and have a good weekend and the rest of your week. Thank you for being here.